So now, given you a brief introduction, now let's delve just slightly more deeply into general developments that we observe in the financial industry. First of all, we observe that there are regulatory changes to the financial industry. We see open banking. You see PSD2. This is basically the Payment Services Directives 2 of the European Union. Generally speaking, there's this whole idea of that the world of financial services is being opened up. In some case by competition, in some case by interest from consumers, and in some case driven by regulations. That is different in different jurisdictions and different countries, and so on and so forth. Now, the fundamental question though that I have for myself and that you should ask yourself is, will actually be there banks in the future? And for that, let's not think about Canada. Let's think about the rest of the world. And one country that I'm particularly interested in here is China. Now, I know we have a lot of Chinese students in the class, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're most likely all WeChat users. Now, WeChat, for those of you who don't know, is not a chat software like WhatsApp. It's actually much more. It is effectively a little bit like a micro operating system, or a super app that allows you to do any number of interactions with other people. It allows you to do, obviously chat software and the like, but also has a lot of financial applications. It has insurances that you can buy. You can make deposits. You can make even simple investments, and so on and so forth. So on the right hand side down here, I show you the interface for WeChat as it looks like. And I encourage you to talk to your Chinese friends to actually show you how the app would look like for them. Now in China, WeChat has, the data that I have says about 900 million users. I bet by now it's over 1 billion users. They have an 84% market penetration. So almost everybody in China uses WeChat. And even in the GTA, we have a large number of WeChat users. Why? Because, so for those of you who live somewhere in the suburbs and who go to suburban malls, you already are aware that many of these malls are geared towards Chinese tourists. And each of these stores enables you to pay with WeChat Pay. If you go to Terra or other, ethnic, as they call it, stores here in Toronto, you also see that they allow you to pay with WeChat. So in other words, this is a major thing, right? So WeChat is coming. Now WeChat is not a bank, but they are facilitating transactions and other financial products, right? Without being a bank. Another competitor of WeChat is Alipay. Alipay actually, does very much the same thing. One of the major things about it is that Alipay actually at some point was the largest, if you want, money market fund in the world. Right? Because they collect deposits from people, and then when you have these deposits, they have to be invested somehow. So imagine that. Alipay, which is not a bank, is a money market fund and the largest money market fund in the world. Not a major US bank, not Goldman Sachs, not a hedge fund, Alipay. Now, of course, there are other developments here also in North America. There is Facebook Libra. I hope you've heard about that. Facebook is trying to build its own financial infrastructure, which is outside of the traditional infrastructure. You can see that there is a very large number of partners that were part of the original Libra consortium. Some of these have already dropped out. And this is an ongoing exercise, but it's coming. And when Libra is active, it will change the way of financial services. Now, on the other hand, if you look at the financial services sector, they're actually continuing to operate in terms of business as usual. So what you see is there's two graphs here. One is the prices of financial services, and that's the path on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you see the cost of financial services. And as you can see, with forgetting about France for the moment, which is a very heavily regulated country, but the price for financial services, even over the last 20 years, has gone up. Right? On the other hand, the cost of the IT, and most of financial services are provided by IT and enabled by IT, has been going down dramatically over the last 10 years. So you ask yourself, how is this possible that financial institutions keep charging people a lot of money even though their cost structure is going down and down and down? That's, it's quite insane, isn't it? So clearly this is an industry which is ripe for disruption. Now, why should you worry about this, right? So, you saw the graph, you saw that financial institutions keep charging high rates and high prices, their costs are going down. You go, well, but so what? It's been going on for 20 years. Why should we worry about this now? What is so different now? Well, generally speaking, you should always worry. Let me give you an example. This is Nokia, right? This is a phone. You've not probably seen this. And I apologize for those of you with MGT 415. You've seen this side of slides before, but here we are. So what you see here is a phone which used to be the most popular phone in the late 1990s. Yes, I know dinosaurs still roamed the planet, and I was young and had more hair. But be that as it may, at the time, and even in 2007, which was the early 2000s, Nokia had a market share in devices of 49.4%. So they almost had 50% of the device market. And only 5 years later, their market share dropped to 3%. Why is that? Well, it's because a different type of phone came about, the smartphone. In particular, actually, the smartphone that came about was the BlackBerry that you see here. BlackBerry, many of you probably have not heard about BlackBerries, have never seen a BlackBerry or even used a BlackBerry, but it was the first major smartphone provider of making a smartphone that people actually wanted to have. And they too, at some point, had about almost 100% market share of the smartphone markets. Now, how much is the market share of BlackBerry today? Well, 0. Right? Why? Well, because of course the iPhone came along. Now the question though is, you had some companies that were very innovative, that were very clever, and that did really cool products. BlackBerry was linked with University of Waterloo because it came out of Waterloo, Canada. Nokia came out of Finland. They had worldwide research centers. They were innovating. They had smart people working for it. And yet within 5 years, they basically were obliterated. How's that possible? How could this happen? Well, it starts with the fact that with two things, of course, right? It starts first with changes in technology, and it starts also with a fundamental misunderstanding of the incumbent of what people actually want from them. So let's think about the BlackBerry. Right? So if you ask people in the early 2000s, early 2010s, when BlackBerry was still around, you ask people a BlackBerry why do people actually want to have a BlackBerry? And they would say many things. They said, oh, people really want the keyboard. No, actually that's not the case, because people use they don't want a firm keyboard, they use touchscreens now, right? Then people want the security, because BlackBerry actually was very famous for having a lot of enabling corporate security. Well, no, actually firms have found better ways to deal with security. Then they say they want to be businessy. Well, people like their toy, right? They say BlackBerry is cool and cutting edge. Well, no, actually really not, right? People like being Canadian. Well, even in Canada, BlackBerry was obliterated, right? And so now what is a BlackBerry at its core? Well, at its core, it was actually the first smartphone which allowed you to take your desk with you. Right? And so what people really valued was the independence for their desk. Or to put it very bluntly, they valued mobile email, right? That's really what they wanted. The fact that they don't have to open the laptop, have to, sign up, put a stick in and connect to their phone and so on and so forth. They value to have everything on one device. Now let's think of banks for a moment. If you ask bankers now of what is it that people value about you, they give you all a number of things, right? They give you the brand name, they give you easy access to the brand, great product range, fair prices, great advice, latest tech, friendly tellers, all of that they give you as reasons why they prefer, why people want to use their bank. But at its core, what people want from the bank is really just two things. They want the safekeeping of their assets, and they want to have the ability to transfer money. So as I said before in the last set of slides, is if all data moves to the cloud, then the safekeeping of assets does not have to be done by a bank anymore. If everything is in the cloud, actually the transfers of value don't have to be done by a bank. They could be done by the cloud computing provider. So the real question is, why do we need banks? What is it that they do? Now, this is an open-ended question, and this is something that we need to explore in this course. But the basic bottom line is that what we will see over the next years, and I guarantee this will happen, is that actually many of these services, like the safekeeping of assets and the transfer of money, will move away from banks. And once that is happening, there's a real question of how the banks will continue doing what they do in the way that they do it now. That's going to be really difficult. So now the major thing though is one, and that's what I'm going to, is that the world as a whole is, in particular the digital world, is moving towards platforms. So if you think of what destroyed BlackBerry, it was not the Apple iPhone per se at all. What it really was this little symbol here that you see. Right? What is that? Well, it's the App Store, right? So it's the ability that of a smartphone, of either an Android phone or of a Google phone, of an Apple phone, to provide a platform for other services to be provided. And Apple, what they really do is they provide a platform for apps. Right? So what makes an Apple iPhone so valuable is not the nice shiny screen that you can touch and stroke gently. It's really that you have these apps. And that brings you to the question of, where WeChat and Alipay came in, and they just took this to the next extreme, where they actually created a platform within their own app which provides all kinds of services, including financial services. So it's already happening in China. And in many ways, China and the Chinese financial services have leapfrogged over the development that we have in Canada, the US, and Europe. Right? So we're actually behind China by now on that front. So if you ask my opinion, the past was siloed banks with where everything has their own data center, where everything was maintained by the financial institutions, and there was a lot of replication of capabilities and no network effects. The current world and where we're going, and in the near future, is of course to cloud computing and cloud storage. So banks use AWS. Goldman Sachs famously said that their security, their own internal security of their data centers, was no better than that of AWS. So they said it's equivalent to AWS security. In other words, they don't need to operate their own data centers. In fact, banks are not tech companies. And the next part, of course, is that this, what cloud computing will bring, and what the technological transformation of a standard part of the banking industry will bring, is open banking, open data. It will allow new service providers to get to customers of banks that are now treated, in their own silos. And then, of course, that's the near future, will happen next 3 to 5 years. But going forward, if you reiterate this idea, is that you can go to arbitrary platforms. So, financial services can be enabled by tech firms. And the question is what role will financial institutions play then? Who will actually do the intermediation of risk, of size, of time, and so on and so forth? How will this work? How will we arrange that? And how does monetary policy work in that kind of framework? So those are the kind of questions that we're after in this particular class here. So let's see where this leads. Now, the technology that I am particularly interested in, and that we'll spend a lot of time on in this course, is so-called distributed ledger and blockchain technology. What it effectively is, it is a joint system. It's operated by many, but it is essential. It is an infrastructure which is jointly shared by everybody. It has features such as secure storage and exchange of information and transfer of value, and has guaranteed execution of code. So it's some form of programmable money that we can create here. And the promise that it has, it could be an open platform, it can have a global reach, and it can lead to frictionless or a reduced friction finance. So this is where this is where I think the world will be going. And this is what we're trying to talk about in this course, and we're trying to understand better.